Hello and welcome to News Central. Here are some stories making rounds beyond the continent. I'm Darshan Usman. We begin the news from the United States, where President Donald Trump has signed a new proclamation barring citizens from 12 countries from entering the United States, citing national security concerns. Now, the full travel ban affects nationals from Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. The restriction will take effect on June 9, 2025. In addition to the full bans, the proclamation imposes partial restrictions on citizens of Burundi, Cuba, Laos, Sierra Leone, Togo, Turkmenistan, and Venezuela. There are some exemptions, including athletes traveling for major sporting events, some Afghan nationals and dual nationals with citizenship in unaffected countries. Now, Trump stated that the measure is intended to prevent individuals considered potential security risks from gaining entry into the U.S. Meanwhile, Tehran residents expressed mixed reactions hours after the U.S.'s announcement on travel bans affecting a number of countries, including Iran. President Trump stated that the measure is intended to prevent individuals considered potential security risks from gaining entry into the U.S. It is set to come into effect on Monday. The U.S. president said the list could be revised if material improvements were made and additional countries could be added as threats emerge around the world. While still in the U.S., President Trump has publicly expressed disappointment over Elon Musk's strong criticism of his administration's flagship legislation, the One Big Beautiful Bill, OBB. Speaking to reporters in the Oval Office, Trump stated he and Musk had a great relationship, but doubt if that will remain. Musk, who briefly served as head of Department of Government Efficiency, labeled the bill a disgusting abomination, criticizing its elimination of electric vehicle tax incentives and its potential to add trillions to the national deficit. Trump, in response, suggested that Musk may be suffering from Trump derangement syndrome, a term he uses to describe former allies who become critical after leaving his administration.
Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we're well anymore. I was surprised because you were here. Everybody in this room practically was here as we had a wonderful send-off. He said wonderful things about me. You couldn't have nicer. Said the best things. But I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
Meanwhile, Trump said he held a very good phone call on trade with Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping Thursday, adding that both leaders had invited each other to visit their respective countries. Trump said the call lasted approximately 1.5 hours and resulted in a very positive conclusion for both countries on Truth Social. He said U.S. and Chinese trade teams would hold a new meeting. According to Trump, President Xi graciously invited the First Lady and me to visit China, and a gesture he reciprocated. Now, joining us for more insight on this is Eji Keokpa, Global Affairs Analyst from Dallas, Texas. Thank you so much for joining us on the news, sir.
Hey, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Now, President Trump has never left anyone in doubt as to his views on national security and the tendency to impose this sort of ban. Speaking of the ban on some countries. Now, the question is, why now, and why these affected countries?
I am not privy to, what led him to decide on those countries. But one thing you will have to, be cognizant of is immigration is not a right, it's a privilege. So you can decide, just like somebody coming to your home, you could decide at any point and say, I don't want you anymore because I have concern of certain individuals coming in. So this is not the first time. I mean, U.S. Putting a restriction on certain people coming from certain companies is not new. Trump is probably just following in the precedent that has been set, before this time. But again, what it does is to let countries begin to look at their own citizens and look at their own situation and be able to, put forth this sort of, image that makes their own citizens welcomed in another country. Nobody wants terrorists or people labeled as terrorists. If you go back to the Nigerian time, back in the 80s when Nigeria kicked out Ghanaians, and that was the first time an African country was doing such a thing. So nobody should be surprised. Again, it's immigration, and people are not entitled to go to another country except if they are granted visa. So, it's going to be an adjustment. People are now going to start looking at what led to this and what can they, make an amends. Because by Trump banning these people from coming, he hasn't withdrawn the ambassador of U.S. ambassador to any of these countries. So this is just about certain individuals. So I guess when you apply for visa from those countries, that the consulate will now let you know whether you are free to come or not, able to go.
Okay. Now, the president mentioned foreign terrorists and other security threats. Is there any antecedent from, say, Burundi? And what exactly does the White House consider to be the kind of threat that the countries on the list pose to Americans' well-being?
But sometimes it's not because it could be people who are not from Burundi, but who are able to go to Burundi and get the passport of Burundi, but they are not, native of Burundi. So what Burundi will now have to do now is through their own diplomatic, channels, approach the State Department and want to know what led to this ban. Are there individuals that have been identified to be coming from our country or already came from our country? And we want to know. And then, if that information is given to them, they'll make a decision and say, hey, these people are not, are not Burundis, or we're going to have to make an adjustment. Just like people coming to America through Mexico, because oftentimes they say they are Mexicans, but they are not Mexicans. It could be other people infiltrating the weak border issues through Mexico, and they can enter America. But the public will react and say these are Hispanic or Mexicans. So I think it behooves every country now that wants to maintain its own integrity, to look into some of these things and address it internally before they get embarrassed by banning them from coming to America.
Well, Ejike, President Trump's immigration crackdown is understandable because he's been on it for a while now. But coming at a time of backlash from China over tariffs and the departure of Elon Musk from the administration, do you think that, or don't you think that these are too much at the same time?
Well, Trump moves at the speed of light, and he's very energetic. Again, he's doing this this is his first time in office, but he's doing it because he looked at what he did when he was there 4 years. And now, he's come back, renewed, invigorated. The China thing, and everything he's done, again, is making people come to talk with America. It's making people reaching out to him. He's been in office for 4 months or so. Look at how many world leaders have come to Washington, D.C. to meet with him. And that's the kind of person he is. He will do things that nobody else is thought of doing. He wakes up, boom, he does it because he's the executive of the country. And he's doing it within his own constitutional rights and means. And some of it has called, on people, filing a lawsuit, but that hasn't slowed him. And so that is what countries are supposed to do. Every country is supposed to stand up for their own image, for their own citizens, and do pronouncements. If other people get offended by it, so be it. If you're not making anybody angry in the world, you're not doing anything. You have to offend some people because you can't be friends with everybody else. There are certain people that want you, and there's some people who don't want you, and so be it. This is not a popularity contest. This is actually, a principle of what we learned in economics 101, barrier to entry creates value. So Trump is very good at doing that. He's creating that barrier, and people are coming to America and say, hey, this is harsh, but let's talk.
Okay. Now, Ejike, Donald Trump said he had a very good phone call on trade with Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping on Thursday. He also added that both of them have invited each other to visit their respective countries. How far can that really go, looking at, the rift that was between them recently?
So again, effort has been made. So now let's look for the outcome. Let's see who goes to the other side first. But 1.5 hours talking with the president, it's not going to be just a chit chat. After the pleasantries, they get down to what it is the call is about. So China recognizes that, even though China is as big as they are and they have in the past decades made some impression on the country, China needs America and vice versa. America don't necessarily need China, but we recognize that certain things that come from China that we want, and China is recognizing that certain things America does that is good for their own economy. I was in China in January, and you don't want to hear my opinion on what I saw, but that is neither here nor there. The point now is that the two, superpowers, one pretending, one being realistic. You could choose which one is pretending and who is not. They want to talk. It is good for the world. We want a peaceful world, because when the world is peaceful, prosperity has a greater chance of occurring. But if we have all this tension and people spying on each other, wanting to undermine each other, then everybody is affected. Because again, when two elephants fight, who is going to suffer? Is the grass. So we don't want to be polarized. We want to be one harmonized in terms of being able to do things, but we got to do it to benefit your country. You cannot surrender your country to another country and have people come in and violate you because they think they have the right to it. Nobody should do it, whether it's a small country or big country. And so China has made this noise, but China recognized I got to have to go have a talk, because again, no country is going to be without relying on another country. We are sort of interrelated now, but you can also come to a point where you say, I don't want to deal with you, and that's the end of the story. So okay. China has made the move. America, the president is, welcome them, and then we'll see what happens, when they visit. That's the outcome we're looking for, but the effort is commendable.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, AGK.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Away from that, finally, from the United States, President Trump on Thursday hosted Germany's new leader, Friedrich Merz, to the White House. Now, this comes as Chancellor Merz works to keep the U.S. on board with Western support for Ukraine, and the meeting was also aimed at diffusing trade tensions and further strengthening Germany's long-criticized military spending. German officials say the two leaders have started to build a decent relationship, with Merz wanting to avoid the antagonism that defined Trump's relationship with one of his predecessors, Angela Merkel, in the Republican president's first term.
I haven't discussed it very much. I know that you're spending more money on defense now, and quite a bit more money, and that's a positive.
Definitely. America is again in a very strong position to do something on this war and ending this war. So let's talk about what we can do jointly, and we are ready to do what we can. And you know that we gave support to Ukraine, and that we are looking for more pressure on Russia. The European Union did, and we should talk about that.
We take a break now, but when we come back, we'll tell you that UN records highest staff death toll in history. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Now, President Claudia Sheinbaum has rejected U.S. claims that Cuban doctors working in Mexico face forced labor, stating that the agreements are transparent and legally binding. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, Mexico has employed thousands of Cuban doctors to address a shortage of healthcare professionals in rural areas. Currently, approximately 3,400 Cuban medical specialists are working across the country, according to the Cuban Embassy in Mexico. The U.S. government has labeled these missions as a forced labor program of the Cuban regime citing concerns over the working conditions and compensation of Cuban doctors. However, no concrete evidence has been provided to substantiate these claims.
Pues primero no es trabajo forzado, ¿no? Bueno, tendría que demostrarse. Entonces hay un contrato para que médicos cubanos ayuden a la población en México. Entonces no vemos ningún problema en eso. Es legal, es abierto y no tiene problema.
Muchas gracias, presidente.
Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has called on French President Emmanuel Macron to support finalizing the EU-Mercosur Free Trade Agreement despite France's strong opposition. While Macron has expressed reservations about the agreement, citing concerns over its potential impact on European agriculture and climate commitments, Lula emphasized that the deal would counter rising global protectionism and unilateralism, describing it as the best response to such trends. In a separate development, Lula condemned Israel's military actions in Gaza, labeling them as premeditated genocide, criticizing the disproportionate use of force, comparing it to historical atrocities.
Esta é a melhor resposta que nossas regiões podem dar diante do cenário de incertezas criado pelo retorno do unilateralisme et protectionnisme tarifaire.
Cet accord, dans le moment stratégique que nous vivons, il est bon pour beaucoup de secteurs. Mais il fait porter un risque pour l'agriculture des pays européens. Pourquoi? Parce que l'Europe, pour des principes d'ailleurs que le président Lula, son gouvernement partage, et qu'il a défendu tout à l'heure admirablement, l'écologie, c'est-à-dire pour réduire les émissions de CO2, pour préserver la biodiversité, nous on a interdit à nos agriculteurs d'utiliser des composantes. On a demandé de changer leurs pratiques. Et c'est une bonne chose, c'est la même vision de progrès qu'on partage. Mais les pays du Mercosur ne sont pas du tout au même niveau réglementaire. Donc il y a très clairement une différence majeure, qui n'est pas une différence de compétitivité, de spécialité, mais de normes. Les contraintes ne sont pas les mêmes.
Então, Getalina, estamos vendo genocídio na nossa cara todo santo dia. Todo santo dia. Ainda ontem acho que morreram 95 pessoas. Todos inocentes e todos civis. Não tem nenhum chefe do Hamas. Então, sinceramente, não é nem como presidente do Brasil. É como ser humano. É como ser humano. Não é possível a gente aceitar, sabe, uma guerra que não existe, e sim um genocídio premeditado de um governante de extrema-direita que está fazendo uma guerra, inclusive, contra os interesses do seu próprio povo. Porque é Israel.
On a sad note, the United Nations has paid tribute to its 168 staff members who lost their lives in 2024. Now they include 126 personnel killed in Gaza, most of whom served with the UN agency that assists Palestine refugees. Ahead of a memorial service at its headquarters in New York, Secretary General Antonio Guterres told journalists that the men and women being honored were extraordinary individuals, driven by pursuit of peace. He acknowledged that the past year has been especially devastating for UN humanitarian workers, noting that more than 1 in every 50 staff in Gaza has been killed in the conflict. Guterres noted that it is the highest staff death toll in United Nations history.
More than 1 in every 50 UNRWA staff in Gaza has been killed in this atrocious conflict. This is the highest staff death toll in United Nations history. Some were killed delivering life-saving aid, others alongside their families, others while shielding the vulnerable. The sacrifice of all 168 of our fallen colleagues everywhere, humanitarians, peacekeepers, peacemakers, is a tragedy. And to the world I say, we will not grow numb into suffering. We will not accept the killing of UN personnel. We will not accept the killing of humanitarians, journalists, medical workers, or civilians as the new normal anywhere and under any circumstances. There must be no room for impunity.
Lebanon Prime Minister Nawaf Salam has confirmed that Lebanese army has dismantled more than 500 military positions and arms depots belonging to Hezbollah in southern part of the country. In a televised address marking 100 days in office, Salam said his government was pressing ahead with reforms demanded by the international community. He noted that the state continues to restore its authority over the entire national territory and to have a monopoly on arms. In response, Israel was meant to withdraw from all Lebanese territory but has remained in 5 positions along the border and continues to carry out strikes, saying it targets Hezbollah, which was severely weakened in the war.
ما حدا مهما كانت عزيمته قوية بقدر يصلح كل شيء لا ب 100 يوم ولا ب 12 شهر يلي هي عمر الحكومة الباقي. الدولة مستمرة بعملها مثل ما اجى باتفاق الطائف ومثل ما رجعنا اكدنا عليه بيان الوزاري لبست سلطتها على كامل اراضيها بقواها الذاتية وحصر السلاح بايدها. والجيش اللبناني عم يواصل توسيع انتشاره ولحد هلا فكك بالجنوب الليطاني اكثر من 500 موقع عسكري ومخزن سلاح. يكون واضح ما ممكن نحقق الامن والاستقرار طالما استمرت الانتهاكات الاسرائيليه اليوميه واستمر احتلال اجزاء من ارضنا وبعد ما تم الافراج عن اسرانا. رح نواصل الضغوط لاجبار اسرائيل على الانسحاب الكامل من كل شبر من اراضينا تطبيقا للقرار 1901 ورح نعمل على توفير كل ظروف اعاده اهلنا لاراضيهم بكرامه واعمار يلي دمروا العدوان الاسرائيلي.
That's all on Beyond the Continent. Remember, you may send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You may also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, GoTV channel 23, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Darshan Usman.